Hey guys, it's Jordan here from SwitchWatch. Hope you're all having a great day. Now today's review is of Ys 8, the Lacrimosa of Dana on the Nintendo Switch. Thanks to NIS America, as always, for providing this review copy so I can tell you if it's worth your hard-earned cash or not. Now full disclosure, I have reviewed this game previously before on the PlayStation Vita like a year or two ago. So this review is going to be very similar to that, but with a lot of updates for specific Nintendo Switch stuff. Anyways, let's get on with it. Now before I get stuck into this review, I just want to stress that I have fully completed this game before. I obviously haven't gone through the whole thing again on Switch, as there's no need for that. Hence the early game footage. I've played enough to get to grips with the game on the new system and see how the port is in comparison and if it's worth your hard-earned cash or not. So Ys is a long-running and well-loved series. It's been around since 1987, the same year as the first Final Fantasy game. With only its 8th mainline game compared to Final Fantasy's 15th, it's clear to see that maker Falcom like to take their time between iterations. While never a huge success, it's a series that's always had a bit of a niche following, especially in the West. Although counter to the usual trend, it seems to be a series on the rise after Ys Celceta a good few years ago, and now Ys 8 Lacrimosa of Dana, which released on the PlayStation 4 and Vita last year. It's now out on the Nintendo Switch, and I for one couldn't be any more excited, as this entry is almost a downright classic in my opinion. The story is usually the first and most important point in regards to a JRPG. The story here follows the lead protagonist Adol, a young adventurer, and his older friend Dogi, as they hitch a ride on a ship sailing across the ocean to somewhere adventure lies. As part of their entry fee, they are required to work on the ship as sailors. As with any ship, in any JRPG ever, the fate of the ship is of course in doubt, and it's not long until you're attacked by a giant sea monster. Now back when this game first released, I played it and I was thoroughly unimpressed with the opening segment. It was a bad introduction, very ham-fisted, bland, and forced exposition. It came across as a little amateurish in how rushed it was to explain things that characters already knew. Since that time, the translation was completely redone thanks to a backlash from the players. Aside from some wrongly listed meals, I actually didn't notice too much wrong with it, and I genuinely can't tell the difference between now and before. Indeed, if this is the new translation, it's hardly perfect too, since I did notice some obvious grammatical errors here and there. The beginning aside, I want to stress that Ys 8 actually had me very captivated during my playthrough. After the beginning, I was wholly prepared to be in for a really mediocre cliched filled story, and while that latter point may still be true, after the opening I was fascinated by what the story had to offer. It's not that the writing improves into something to be particularly proud of, although it does hold back on treating you like an idiot, but more the fact of what it develops into. As Adol finds himself washed ashore after the ship was taken under by the sea monster, we now begin a deserted island survival story. Finding your fellow castaways, building a base, and making the most of what you have, all the while discovering the secrets of the cursed Isle of Sirens. Without wanting to spoil anything, right from the beginning, Adol has constant dreams about the subtitular Dana, which of course doesn't make any sense until a little later on when things start to come together. The fate of Adol and Dana is the key to this story, and how their fates unravel really had me gripped from beginning to end. As stated, it's not the best story in the world. It has a few too many tangents for my liking at times. It's just a situation that appeals to my taste as an RPG gamer from a time gone by. Combat is a huge part of JRPGs. As far as I'm aware, Ys has always been an action RPG game, and this iteration is no different. It's incredibly action orientated. Now, unlike normally, I'm not going to tell you about which buttons do what, for the simple fact that I remapped most of the default face buttons. I found the default settings to be unsatisfactory. I've played far too many Dynasty Warriors games to deal with what Ys 8 presented to me at first. I was very grateful for the option to change them, which is great thinking on the part of the developers. All too many games these days still refuse to let you remap buttons, but not here. You have your normal damage dealing attack, which can be spammed as much as you want. This is usually perfectly fine for taking out small enemies or ones that you've leveled up beyond. When things start to get a little tougher, you're going to want to take advantage of each of the character's unique skill attacks. These are more powerful of course, and offer a little more to the battle. You can equip up to 4 at a time, and these can be used by holding the right shoulder button plus whichever face button an attack is mapped to. At the beginning of the game I tended to avoid using them, but around 10 hours or so in I started to realise their incredible usefulness. While they use up SP, this can be quickly gained back by attacking normally, so you can be fairly liberal with them. When things start to get really tough, you can use your super attack, which has its own special gauge that takes much longer to fill up. These are generally worth saving for boss fights or some of the larger enemies that roam the field. This can be activated by holding both shoulder buttons together. It's not all quite so mindless though, there is strategy here, especially so if you play on harder difficulties. Of the 3 characters that you'll have in your battle party at any one time, you'll want one of each that specialises in different beasts. For example, Adol and Sahad are pretty useless against flying enemies and will do little damage to them. Lexia, however, can do real damage to them and break the opponent, lowering their defenses and allowing others to do real damage too. Sahad is good at taking on enemies with hard bodies such as sea monsters with shells, while Adol is good against monsters with soft bodies. The other characters that join you later will also share one of these preferences. Thankfully you can switch between teammates with just a tap of a button, allowing you to utilise your allies to their most usefulness, instead of relying on the AI to know what to do. There's also a dodge mechanic and a guard mechanic, each of which if timed correctly can grant you a bonus. There is generally a lot to the combat. It may sound like too much, but I don't think it's all entirely necessary if you don't want it to be. Obviously on higher difficulties you'll need to utilise everything you can muster, but on easy mode you can just stroll right through. That's another plus point of this game, there are a lot of varied difficulty settings. So aside from rescuing your other castaways and trying to find a way off the island, you can help them with anything they need. For example, if the doctor wants to experiment with a new medicine, then he may ask you to find ingredients. Some reward you with items, others improve your base, and all of them improve your affinity with the character, allowing them to be more useful in defending your base. I don't think you really need to do them, but I actually enjoyed seeing the side stories of all the characters that you help out. There's a little bit more heart here to the side quests than what you'll find in other Japanese RPGs these days. I love this game, by the way. Exploring, recruiting people and base building are just some of the things that are often found in my most beloved RPGs. Suikoden, Skies of Arcadia, Dark Cloud, Azure Dreams, just to name a few of my favourite games of all time. And it's not a coincidence that they all share some sort of base camp recruitment sort of mechanic. There's not a huge amount of depth or micromanaging going on here, but it's enough to keep me wanting to do more and more. While fighting monsters and unraveling the story are the backbone of the gameplay, it's actually the constant stream of finding new people to populate your colony that truly drove me forward. There was always a buzz when I found someone new to add to my base and in turn expand the amenities available. It's a game that always made me want more and more. In that regard, it's one very difficult to put down, even though I've played through it already. In terms of comparison, I had very strong vibes of Xenoblade Chronicles mixed with a Monster Hunter light kind of experience with a Dreamcast, PlayStation 2 style presentation of something like Final Fantasy X and Skies of Arcadia. If that sounds up your alley, then you'll probably love Ys 8 as much as I do. These are high praise comparisons, but that's genuinely how I feel while exploring the Island of Sirens. It's not perfect though, as I'm sure you've seen by now. The weakest aspect of the game for me is in the visuals. I was looking so forward to playing this in full HD on the TV screen. Seeing the nice bright colours really pop was almost a dream for me as a non-PlayStation 4 owner. As soon as I booted the game up, I was instantly disappointed. Without wanting to sound too harsh, it looks absolutely terrible on a big TV. And this is coming from someone who thought the Vita game looked pretty good. The character models are nice, but the outside environments are borderline unacceptable. Everything has horrific graininess during movement, almost like static over the screen, and it's almost painful to play. Not only that, but the colours have been toned down and come out much darker than what I remember. I'm not entirely sure what went wrong here, considering this game should not be pushing the system's capabilities. It looks much better in handheld mode with everything scaled down. It's far more acceptable of an experience. But still, with the graphics on par with a HD PlayStation 2 game, this should not look this bad. I honestly can't believe they were happy to release this game looking as it does. When you have a beautiful looking game like Xenoblade Chronicles 2, the docked visuals here are just not up to it. Only play this game in handheld mode. Performance wise, it wasn't perfect either, although it's not terrible as far as I can tell. It's kept to 30 frames per second with some stuttering here and there, but nothing major that impacted the gameplay. Just like the Vita version, there is noticeable pop-in and low animation frames on distant enemies. I was hoping that could have been fixed or smoothed out for this release, but it was not to be sadly. The audio is outstanding. There are some stellar tunes here in Ys 8, from sweet considered tracks in safe zones to full-on blood-pumping goodness out in the field and during boss battles. This is one game that you want to get your headphones out for to inject straight into your ears. This is certainly a soundtrack I would love to listen to outside of the game, and actually I do. Since hearing for the first time a year ago, having the soundtrack on my phone to listen to anytime was a high priority for me. I highly recommend turning up the music and the sound effects down just a notch to take it all in better. For value, in my opinion, you're getting one of the best, most likable RPGs of the modern era. Thanks to the large file size, you're looking at a full price game, $60 and £50. That's currently a lot more than you can get it for on the PlayStation 4 and Vita, which I think is fair to consider, especially as, for me, this port isn't exactly ideal, despite being a fantastic game. As much as I truly wanted it on my Switch, I feel I may have been better going for the PlayStation 4 version if I wanted to play primarily on the TV. If you only play handheld, then Vita version may be good, but the Switch is equal, if not better in that regard. Whichever version that you do go for, I don't think you will regret your purchase, as it is a fantastic game. Docked visuals aside, Ys 8 is a sublime game. As long as you play it in handheld mode, you'll have one of the best RPGs of the modern era. If you like games such as Xenoblade Chronicles with a nice bit of Final Fantasy X, Skies of Arcadia vibes, then you will love this game too. It's a fantastic action RPG that will hook you in with its gameplay and base building ally recruiting progress. The story and characters are interesting and likeable, and the soundtrack is utterly amazing. I just can't believe how shocking it looks in docked mode. It really took down the experience for me, and if I didn't have to capture footage for this review, there's no way I would play it in docked. Handheld mode is much better, although the performance isn't perfect. It's an amazing game, one of my favourites in recent years, but has seemingly been botched for this console. Had this port been as good as it should have been, this would have been an easy 9.5 for me. Sadly, it just doesn't feel right, and the performance has really brought it down. An 8 out of 10. Okay guys, thank you ever so much for watching this review of Ys 8. I know it's still a good score, but there are some really big caveats in there. If you're still on the fence, I'd highly recommend you getting the PlayStation 4 version. If you found this review useful, then hit that like button and leave a comment below telling us what you think. If you're new here, then we would love it if you hit that subscribe button and the little bell to keep up to date with all our Switch related stuff. I've been Jordan from SwitchWatch, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care.